your messaging is the foundation for everything that happens in your business. It can determine the type of clients that you attract, the type of projects that come your way, and it can even affect the value that prospects will place on you and what you offer. So I wanted to do a little rundown of the top 5 messaging mistakes that I see out there and give you some ways to avoid those issues and come out on the other side with the perfect messaging. So let's hop right in. Messaging mistake number 1, making it about you or what you think is important. While we might be referring to this as your or your business's messaging, we should definitely come to terms with the fact that it's not all about you. Sometimes when it's our area of expertise and we're on the inside, there are things that are going to be important to us, or they're going to seem important to us, but they don't really move the needle with prospective clients or customers. So this first messaging mistake is kind of here to remind us to all take a step back and to make sure that we make our messaging about them, the customers, the clients, make it all about them. Now, messaging mistake number 2 is forgetting to make it exciting or to stir emotion. Now, this one has really a lot more to do with persuasion and moving the masses than anything else. And the sometimes hard reality is that people take action or they buy based on emotion. So if your messaging is too clinical, might be a good word. If it's dry, it's not going to persuade. So remember to make it exciting, or at least in some way stir some emotion. And now, number 3, not keeping it simple. This is also like a really big one that happens all the time. We forget to keep it simple. For me, this encompasses, a few different things. But first, it includes when people stuff a whole bunch of buzzwords or industry jargon into their messaging. And while your prospects that are in your industry, they might understand the words, but buzzwords, they just rarely carry any real meaning or weight. And then another example of not keeping it simple is the whole too many cooks in the kitchen angle. Now, as a freelancer or solopreneur, this should be a little easier to avoid because you probably don't have a boardroom full of important people chiming in, feeling the need to get their opinion about what's important into the messaging. But, it still can kind of happen in another way. Like if you're overthinking things too much, you might overload your messaging with too much information, and that's just something that we all want to avoid. So avoid all of these different issues and just keep it simple. Okay, and on to messaging mistake number 4. The message is too selling focused. And this is another one that tends to happen quite a bit. And it makes a lot of sense. We're all eager to sell, right? And we just did some reading up on CTAs and whatnot, right? But if your messaging is too overly focused on the sell, it's definitely going to come across the wrong way. Maybe a little spammy. So a good way to avoid this one here, what I like to say is that you should focus on the helping, not the selling. And then messaging mistake number 5, talking to the wrong audience. And this one is probably the most important. I probably should have made it number 1, but oh well, we saved the big gun for last. If our messaging is targeting the completely wrong audience, we're going to have some really big problems. And I mean, you don't want your messaging to be talking to teens if your business is selling adult diapers, right? And while that's a really obvious example, you would be surprised at what some people do. And then there's another way that this audience issue sneaks through though, and it's probably the more common variation. It's not so much that your messaging is speaking to the wrong audience entirely, it's that you failed to define an audience at all. And so marketing 101, rule number 1 probably, is if you're marketing to everyone, you're marketing to no one. And this applies to the heart of your messaging 100%. Messaging is just so crucial to any solopreneur or freelancer. I mean, no one wants to be doing work that they didn't want for clients that they would have preferred to never attract. So hopefully I've given you some thoughts and some things to keep in mind when you're setting up your own messaging. And let me know if you have any issues, or like if you've seen other messaging mistakes out there and you have tips on ways to avoid them. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. And that's the top 5 messaging mistakes that I see. We'll catch you next time.